Hi everyone, in this video I want to address a question I get a lot around new responsive forms for Office 365, and it is, can I do a calculation within a repeating section row? Now, let's jump into new responsive and just explain what that actually means. Um, a usual example I say is something like if I put a repeating section in and I have two numbers, and I put a label in. Now, if you've dealt with classic or old responsive, you'd know exactly where this is going to go. Quantity and cost. And so you've got two parameters there. And so you've got quantity, so you might say 5 widgets at $5. You want to say it's $25 there. Now, if we did this here, just to explain, what happens is if I go quantity, it's actually an array. It's actually the collection of all of the um, controls. It doesn't know that it's inside the row. So, and then if I do something like this times cost, it's just not going to know what to do with it. If I go integer and calculation, so because these are an array, not just a single number. Now, I have seen people trying to hack the solution around this and do sum. So you can sum an array, which is actually true. So you could do this, but it's not going to work in the long run. So, and this is what this video is all about. I just want to show you what is and isn't going to work. And so you could do this. The problem is this variable is actually global to the form, and this is where it's going to fall down because the calculation is trying to figure out, am I in a row or am I looking at an array? And things get a bit complicated. So we're going to insert that, and first glance it looks like it's working fine. So you go 5 times 5 and you go, great, I've got a solution, fantastic. And I go 5 times 5 and that also works. And so I guess you could say, yeah, they've calculated the value that does come through. Now, however, it doesn't always help just to have these in the row. You often want to have a grand total, for instance. So this is where things get a bit tricky. So we'll let that another label. Now this is what I meant by a global variable. So you've obviously calculated this calculation. If you go, well, I've already got a variable, I'm going to use calculation. Now this is where it gets a little bit crazy. So you go 5 times 5 is 25, perfect, and it's got my grand total. And if I go 4 times 4, things are getting a little bit confused now. It doesn't know what to do. So just making that simple. 2 times 2 and 2 times 2. So 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 4 is 16, and it's saying 16 everywhere. It's a global variable. We don't have an idea of this variable local just to this row. So that's where things sort of fall down. And we're thinking about this at the moment, how we can address controls within a row. And if you're familiar with the web request control, you would start to see some of the things we're working on. So if we come into here, we have web request control. Now this has two properties, the label and the text. And if we come to a variable, what you'll notice is we've started to build this sort of functionality around an object. So let me just do that again. It says now an object, it's got multiple properties. And so what we want to do is go inside and actually see, I want to select the label or the value. Now if I said repeating section, it is an object, that is true, repeating section if I actually select it. And that'll actually find the controls inside there. But I don't want the quantity as a collection. I want the quantity as a single row. So it gets a bit complicated. We are working on it, but just to say that this isn't supported today, and it is something we're going to support in the future. Now, if you do get caught with this and you really want to do calculations within the row and then the grand total, as I mentioned before, what I'd recommend is going back to old responsive. Now, old responsive is still totally supported. You can totally use it. It's not going anywhere, and you can still do this functionality. However, you won't have multi-page and you won't have the same rules engine. So this is the older version of the responsive engine, which eventually will be moved across to the new responsive. So let's do our same example. We put a repeating section on here, and we're going to say, well, it's actually single line of text, and we just go 6 line of text. Now, it's not really text, it's actually a number. So we can come in here and we can say its data type is a decimal. So we have changed things quite a bit in new responsive to make things more explicit. We've got a number control now rather than just have a single line of text. And then what you can do is you can put a calculated value control on here. Now this is where things are a little bit different. We don't have a calculated value control in new responsive yet. So we've got, let's call this quantity, the name, and we'll give it a title. And what you'll notice is in new responsive, you don't have to have title and name, it sort of does it automatically for you as well. Then you go cost, and so you can see there has been some big advancements in the new responsive, but as I said, if you get stuck, you can still use this old responsive until we have that same functionality. So I've got that as a decimal, and then I come to the calculated value, and if I double click on it, I can put a formula in there. So I can come to the formula and I'll see I've got my named controls. So now I can go cost times and name controls quantity. Now the interesting thing here is this control is a control in itself. So I'm going to say total, and this one is total as well. We can just call it total. So now we've got that, let's go to preview and see how that works. Okay, so title we're not going to really worry about for the moment. We'll say 5 times 5 is 25. Great. 4 times 4, 16. Not a problem. Add again. And let's have the same thing before in the new responsive, so that's not really proving anything yet. Now what we can do though is we can add another calculated value control in the bottom of our repeating section. Now I'm just going to nudge that to the right. Call this, I don't know, grand total. Call it grand total. Grand total. I'll put an underscore in there just to keep it easier to reference. Okay, so we've got grand total there. Now if I double click on this, I can put a formula in. No, I put it in the wrong place. Title. Oop, there we go. And okay. So now what we can do is we can actually go sum. Sorry, I forgot that it's not type ahead. You've got to go to the runtime functions here, and you've got the functions. So this is like our formula builder in your responsive. So you've got the sum function here. You got to there, and then you go to your name controls, and you've got your total control. So now we can sum the total of the calculations we had. So go to save and go to preview. Okay, so here we go. 5 times 5, 25. Grand total, 25, not a problem. 2 times 2 is 4, 29. So now you can see that's why it's working. That's how it kind of figures it out and how it works. And this is something we do want to add to new responsive, but as I said, if you get stuck, use old responsive, and hopefully we can have this solved for you in the future. So as always, hope this is helpful to you. Let me know in the comments. Cheers.